Wedding disasters. What's going on with our beloved Doug, and is Abigail on her way home back to Salem? All of that coming up and much more on this edition of In Between Days, where we break down everything that happened this past week on Days of Our Lives. And as most of you know, this week also featured some extra content online, 5 episodes of the spin-off Beyond Salem. We're going to get to all of that in a separate video because I know there's some people out there who haven't had time to consume Beyond Salem. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down. We're going to break down the main show, and then we're going to break down Beyond Salem in a separate video. Now, having said that, keep in mind that the events that happened on Beyond Salem, it gets a little bit confusing. But technically speaking, Beyond Salem, the events that happened, occurred after last week and before this week. But having said that, it's a bit of a standalone thing unto itself. So for the most part, we're not going to talk too much about Beyond Salem. I'm going to offer a few non-spoiler opinions, and we're going to leave it for a separate video so that people have some time to watch it, and then we can come back and discuss it. I'm going to release an extra video probably sometime around Sunday or Monday, but for now we're just going to talk about primarily the main show. Also, before we get into anything else, I want to thank all of my new subscribers that subscribed this past week. There's been a whole bunch of you, and I want to thank you. I also want to thank all of my subscribers in general for listening. It really helps the channel, so be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And we also love comments. All of that is encouraging. It helps the channel. And perhaps one day we'll hit that 100,000 subscriber mark where YouTube will send us a shiny gold plaque. So there's always that. In any case, we're going to jump forwards and we're going to talk about everything that happened this past week on the main show, Days of Our Lives, right here on In Between Days. So hold on to something, maybe grab a cup of coffee if you're listening to this early in the morning. Whatever you need, grab a snack. We're gonna break it all down in just a moment.
My own husband locked me in the freezer.
When you don't see eye to eye,
What is the worst to have a kid right now?
you may end up
Are you thinking about us getting married?
toe to toe.
Alright, and we're back. What you just heard is the promo video for this past week on Days of Our Lives. On Monday, Ben and Sierra discuss parenthood. And Ben is not so into the idea of having a baby right now. Keep in mind, Ben and Sierra were just reunited after a year, after everybody thought she was dead. She was really just kidnapped. Then she had amnesia, had no idea of anything to do with her relationship with Ben. She could not remember it or understand why she would marry a former serial killer. And she went off with Theo for a while, but now, long story short, Ben and Sierra reunited. Things have been a little bit tame for them as of late because they're finally back together and just enjoying each other's company and being back together and reunited. However, things do get a little bit more complicated on Beyond Salem for the two of them, but we'll stay away from that for now because we're just gonna get mainly into the main show. So those two are having a discussion to open up Monday. Sierra is thinking about the time that they have lost and the fact that she wants to jump into this next step and perhaps have a baby with Ben, as she pictures their future together, and they're already married and even remarried, and so it makes some sense. Ben, on the other hand, wants to live in the moment, enjoy the moment, and not push and rush things along. And I'm kind of on Team Ben. They may want to get situated a little bit, and do they even have jobs? I don't recall. So Ben is something of a mechanic and sometimes works in Jake's garage. I don't know. And what is it that Sierra does? Besides moonlight as a princess? Oops, wasn't supposed to say anything about that. So, Bonnie is hiding under Xander's bed in the hotel room, and EJ comes to pay Xander a visit, and basically he wants his $1 million back. If you remember last week, Xander has possession of EJ's money, and EJ wants his money back. EJ does leave with the empty briefcase because the briefcase doesn't have the money in it anymore. Bonnie has the money. Bonnie is hiding under the bed. EJ leaves. And Xander goes back into the bathroom, and Bonnie manages to escape with the money. She actually leaves and re-enters as she has stolen the plastic card to get back into the room. So she pretends to leave, she comes back, she grabs the money, she gets the heck out of there, and she's the one now that has the $1 million that Xander needs to get back to EJ. So EJ thinks he's left with the briefcase full of money, but he is soon to find out that the briefcase is empty, so stay tuned for that. Meanwhile, at the Kyriakis mansion, Callista Lockhart hits on Steve, and that's a little bit funny. There's some stalling going on there when she's hitting on with Steve, because the wedding between Bonnie and Justin is supposed to be taking place, but there are a little bit of there are some hiccups in that, and one of them is that Bonnie's been trying to steal the money that belongs to EJ. She's trying to steal the money from Xander to give it to Callista, who demands that money as hush money because apparently Bonnie is somehow involved, or was somehow involved, in the murder of Callista's husband, who, wait for it, his name is Harrison Lord. So we have Harrison Lord and Callista Lockhart only on Days of Our Lives. Only with Ron as head writer do we get things like this. Anyhow, Gwen almost confesses to Jack about what her real secret is, about how she lied about how she lost her baby, but unfortunately, before Gwen can confess, Jack has an emergency when Julie calls and tells Jack that she's been locked in the freezer by her husband. Now, why would Doug lock her in the freezer? Things did not make sense there, but we will find out more what's going on with our beloved Doug. He might be written out of the show so that he can retire. I'm hoping not. I would rather just see him maybe make the odd cameo like he is right now. And if he is in such poor health, would he really be doing these scenes? I don't have the answers to that, but it does seem like they might be sending him off. EJ returns demanding his money from Xander, as he has discovered that there was no money in the empty case. Xander is legitimately puzzled because he did not take the money out of the case. He did not intend to try to screw over EJ. It's Bonnie who has taken the money, and nobody has figured that out yet. Steve, meanwhile, contacts Kayla because he's getting a weird vibe from Callista, and he senses that something is not right, and it seems like this wedding is kind of being delayed. Bonnie gives Callista the money when she gets back to the Kyriakis, not the Curious Mansion, the Kyriakis Mansion. She gives the $1 million over to her sister-in-law, Callista, but Callista has other plans, and she's not satisfied with the fact that she's been given the money that she asked for. She says now Bonnie is going to get the bullet, and she plans to shoot Bonnie right there in the Kyriakis Mansion upstairs where they are, supposedly getting ready for the wedding, but in fact other things obviously are going on. Once we get to Tuesday, we establish that Julie is worried about Doug with Jack, but she's actually also in a bit of denial and doesn't want to admit to herself that something is obviously very off with Doug, and this may have been going on for a little while. Meanwhile, we get some more insight into what's going on with Doug, as he is essentially missing as far as Jack and Julie are concerned, but Doug is actually at the pub with Roman Brady, acting very confused. He at one point calls Roman John, but nobody makes a lot of nobody thinks too much of that, because at one point John was Roman, but Roman was never John, so technically, I don't know, but that's something that you can see getting mixed up for a moment in time. But unfortunately, as things progress, we see that Doug is in fact more confused than all of that. He confuses Marlena and Vivian, which is a lot more inexplicable. Xander also, back at his place, tells Gwen that only Bonnie was in the room, no one else. But they begin to start to understand that maybe it was Bonnie who was responsible for stealing the money. Gwen also tells Xander that she appreciates all the sacrifices that he has made just for her. He's made himself look like the bad guy to Jack, and he also was almost sent to jail because he had stolen that, not because he had just stolen that money, but a whole bunch of other things. So Gwen wants to establish with him that she's appreciative of what he has done for her when he did not have to. There's also lots of stalling and shenanigans in regards to Justin and Bottie's wedding happening. Things just keep getting delayed, and Justin is a little bit, what the heck is going on? And Steve also has some sneaking suspicions, and as I mentioned, is getting some bad vibes off of Callista. Meanwhile, upstairs, while everybody's waiting downstairs, Bonnie and Callista struggle as Callista has pulled a gun on Bonnie. Bonnie is trying to reason with her and also mentions that Steve being downstairs, even if he hears the gun at all, she's completely going to be screwed. So how can she just shoot Bonnie upstairs? So Bonnie is basically pleading with her life and trying to reason with Callista, but Callista is hearing none of it. She gets a pillow to shoot the gun through so that it will act as a silencer, and there is a struggle between Bonnie and Callista. The gun goes off, and it is Callista who ends up getting shot. The wedding is finally supposed to begin. Bonnie comes downstairs. She's obviously very nervous, and she doesn't want anything to be discovered, including the dead body of Callista upstairs. Bonnie also has a daydream that Callista comes downstairs and is not fully dead, and basically yells that Bonnie has just tried to shoot her and everything completely goes off the wire. However, that is just a daydream and not what happens, but what we do end up seeing is Xander entering the Kyriakis mansion, and he objects to the wedding. He starts to explain everything, and that he believes that Bonnie has stolen his money and why. Justin doesn't want to hear any of it. He wants Xander to be thrown out. Bonnie admits that she did go to Xander's room, but the reason she gives is that she wanted Xander to come to the wedding since Victor and Maggie and everybody else basically refused to come to the wedding. Bonnie is insisting that she just wanted somebody from the Kyriakis family to be there to represent the Kyriakis family in support of Justin. That's the story she's going with, but that's far from the truth. On Wednesday, Belle tells Sean that she needs to go see Philip, and Sean, obviously, given the history between Belle and Sean and Philip, is not too pleased about that, but Belle does go to Titan. She tries to stop Philip from sending an email that he wants to send to Brady, basically a very angry email warning Brady that he will not get away with all the things that Philip thinks he's trying to do. Philip is really upset because of last week, and he tells Belle he saw Chloe and Brady in bed when he went on a plane to basically ambush their business trip, thinking the worst, and then he does end up seeing Chloe and Brady in bed, but they were only in bed because of a mix-up and the fact that only one room was available in the hotel and nothing happened. Philip tries to send his angry, threatening email to Brady, but nothing happens, probably for the best as far as that goes. The email won't go through. So Philip finally takes his computer to IT, and they find the keylogger that Gabby and Jake had installed on the computer to spy on Philip. Sean tells Belle when she comes back that he talked to Claire and he got them tickets to go visit her. Again, if you want to bring Isabelle Durant back to Days of Our Lives, if you want to bring Claire Brady back to Days of Our Lives, there is a petition on some of my older videos. Let's get Claire back to Salem. Gabby and Jake, meanwhile, make plans to set off Philip. So they believe that if Philip believes that Brady is responsible for everything, that they're going to be able to set him off, make him basically reach the brink of things and make him do things that will result in him losing his CEO job. And then in Gabby's mind and Jake's mind, one of the two of them or both of them will be able to take over Titan. Now, why Victor Kiriakis would put Jake DiMera or Gabby Hernandez of all people in charge of all of Titan is beyond me, especially because he always gives it to family, but you just never know. Also, Paulina, Abe, Lonnie, and Eli are back in Salem after their time in Beyond Salem, and they're having dinner together. They discuss the weekend, as a matter of fact, and the weekend that they're discussing is the Labor Day weekend that Beyond Salem takes place over, technically. So they're talking a little bit about that, but we won't get too into it because it doesn't really affect things, and I want to do the Beyond Salem stuff in a separate video. I will admit, and I will say right here that for those of you who watched the way that I did, if you watched Monday's regular episode and then Beyond Salem on Monday and then Tuesday's regular episode and then Beyond Salem on Tuesday and so on and so forth, it did get a little bit confusing because it felt like some people were in two places at the same time. But that's just because Beyond Salem took place over the Labor Day weekend, like I said, in between last week's Days of Our Lives and this week's Days of Our Lives. But it is a little bit confusing because that's not what I expected. I expected kind of this whole side thing to exist unto itself, but I thought it would all be happening in a linear way so that, you know, the people who were away from Salem for the week would just be living their lives in a parallel way to the people who were still on the main show. But that's not in fact what happened. We kind of more saw a lot of instances where people were in two places at once, and it did get a little bit confusing, not to the point where you couldn't follow things and not to the point where it was a huge mess, but just to the point where it wasn't very linear and it was a little bit confusing. So in any case, Paulina, Abe, Lonnie, and Eli are having dinner. They're discussing the very eventful long weekend that they had, which is Beyond Salem, and we'll talk about that another time. Meanwhile, Xander demands his money. Xander finds the money upstairs, where Bonnie was having a little bit of a scuffle with Callista. He finds the money. Not only does he find the money, he finds a gun and asks Bonnie what she was doing with the gun. Justin enters and wants to know the same thing. Bonnie tries to explain everything, but she is arrested because the cops have been called, I think by Xander, and Bonnie ends up arrested by Eli and Lonnie of all people, who have to leave the dinner that they were just having on police business, and that leaves Paulina and Abe alone with the twins. Paulina, while Abe is having some dish duty in the kitchen, he's doing the dishes for Paulina in the kitchen, Paulina is talking to the twins, and she refers to herself as their grandma. Abe overhears this and is obviously quite confused and asks her what the heck she's doing. Well, we all know that Paulina is their real grandmother, but Paulina is going to have to make a story as far as it goes with Abe. So the story that she comes up with is to tell Abe that she can see the two of them getting married in the future and wants to be with him in the future, and she was getting a little ahead of herself perhaps, but she was referring to herself as their grandmother for that reason. And if that ever does happen, then yes, Paulina, who is in reality Lonnie's biological mother, will end up being her stepmother, and maybe she sees that as enough of a bow to tie on to things so that she can sort of she'll have Lonnie in her life and sort of be able to be a motherly figure and a grandmotherly figure to her actual grandchildren. Now, we all know somewhere down the line this secret's gonna get blown way out of the water, but if you think about it, all things considered, in Paulina's mind, that may put enough of a bow on things that she can deal with her mistakes of the past, and she can still have her biological daughter in her life as a stepdaughter, and she can still have her actual grandchildren in her life. So it does, to some sort of extent, make some sense, and also that allows Paulina to keep the secret that she promised her sister Tamra and her mother. It allows her to keep that secret and not go back on her word. And of course, how did that secret all happen? For those of you who need a little bit of a refresher, basically the story is that Paulina was abused by the true biological father of Lonnie, so they decided to pretend that Tamra and Abe were actually the parents of Lonnie. Lonnie didn't know her father growing up. She didn't know her father was Abe, but they reunited about, let's just say, roughly 5 years ago. Lonnie found out that Abe was her father, and they began to have a relationship. Now, at some point, we can assume that Lonnie is going to find out that Abe is not actually her father, and that's going to have a huge dramatic fallout, but drama is what soaps are all about. On Thursday, Rafe updates Eli about Nicole and basically just tells Eli that him and Nicole had a talk, and he's not going to be spending any time with her, so that she is not in the picture, and Rafe and Ava can focus on each other and their relationship. Ava, in a similar way, talks to Nicole and kind of calls her out about her feelings and everything to do with that. But Nicole tells Ava they have said their goodbyes, and Nicole is going to step aside and allow Rafe and Ava to focus on their relationship without having to worry about if Nicole has feelings for Rafe or if Rafe has feelings for Nicole. So it's all supposed to be put to bed and put aside, but we know that that's not going to happen. Rafe walks into the restaurant where Ava and Nicole are talking, and Nicole takes that as her cue to leave, and you can kind of see that Rafe still is having feelings for Nicole, so this is probably all going to get explosive, and as I keep predicting, I think eventually we're going to see the old Ava come out, because she's going to feel scorned by the fact that Rafe is not being honest. He really does have these feelings for Nicole, and when they come boiling up to the surface, and probably something will happen between Rafe and Nicole at some point, things are going to get explosive, and so we are going to have more drama. Also, on Thursday is actually when Abe confronts Paulina about the episode before. Why did she say grandma when she was talking to the twins? But again, she covers, and they talk about getting married in the future. Brady and Chloe at the Kiriakis mansion. I'm not really sure what I was going with there. Brady and Chloe at the Kiriakis mansion. Yeah, they're kind of going over things. Lonnie tells them... Oh yes, now I remember. Sorry, my notes were a little bit confusing here, full disclosure, but yes, Brady and Chloe do show up at the Kiriakis mansion. Lonnie tells them that Callista was just murdered upstairs, and that makes Brady want to get Chloe over to his place or something, but Chloe is asking him again to stop interfering and please respect your relationship with Philip, and he finally agrees for now to do that. Philip goes to Rafe's Rafe's house. Philip goes to Rafe's house to confront Gabby and Jake about what he has discovered about the keylogger on his computer. He's calling them out. He wants them to know that he has found out from IT that they have obviously installed a keylogger on his computer. So what are they going to do now? They're going to come up with a story where they talk their way out of it. So apparently Jake installed a keylogger also on Gabby's computer. She didn't know that, but Jake uses this. Jake uses the fact that he also installed a keylogger on Gabby's computer to quote-unquote prove that it wasn't Gabby and Jake who installed the keylogger on Philip's computer. So Philip then believes them, and now firmly believes that Brady was responsible for installing the keylogger on the computer. So Philip is very angry, and he tells Brady at the Kiriakis mansion that he will pay for spying on Philip's computer. Chloe tells Philip that if he has proof, she'll quit her job with Brady, but not before, and that if Philip is unable to prove that Brady has done anything, which Brady actually hasn't done anything, then Philip will need to stop bringing up Brady, and she never wants to hear about the Brady stuff again. Meanwhile, Brady and Nicole meet up with each other. They run into each other in the Horton Town Square, and they share a little bit of ice cream. Will those two hook up now? I don't know. They both have a lot of history. Nicole is obviously not getting together with Rafe anytime soon, and Brady is not getting anywhere with Chloe, and perhaps still getting over Kristen. So, and Nicole, of course, into Rafe, but also just lost Eric. So is that a recipe for disaster? Are those two going to find comfort in each other beyond sharing ice cream? I don't know. But we're going to get into Friday, and this is where things get more interesting with Doug. So Jack wants Doug to see a doctor, but Julie is still in denial that anything is wrong with Doug, and she said it was probably a one-time thing. Maybe he was tired, maybe he was this, maybe he was that. She tries to explain it away because she doesn't want to believe that something is truly wrong with Doug, and frankly, neither do I. I forget exactly how old he is. I think he's like 98 years old. We can try to look that up at the end of this and see how old the actual actor is, but he is quite up in age. And again, it would be sad if they're writing him out. Julie, by the way, is his real-life partner as well as on the show. They met on the show, but they ended up getting married in real life, and there is a bit of an age difference there. So Doug is a lot older than Julie, and he may be written out of the show. I just, I don't know in what form they're going to do that. They're really not on the show all that much as it is. So much like Victor has been off screen. I do believe Victor's coming back at some point, but obviously you've seen that Victor and Maggie have been off screen for quite a while. A lot of that I think has to do with the COVID situation, so they're not having a lot of the elderly actors on the set, and you'll notice that there haven't been any children on the set in ages because of those are the safety protocols on set at Days of Our Lives. But I digress. It does seem like they're either writing Doug out in a similar way that they did with Caroline, Brady, Peggy McKay, rest in peace. So we'll have to see what's going on there, but it's a little bit of a sad situation. Even if they're not writing him out, even if this is just like more of a storyline, it's a little bit sad to see Doug not having all his faculties. not factories. I think the reason I said factories is because I'm about to talk about the bakery. So Trip talks to Allie in the Horton Town Square, and she is just about to open a table in the middle of Horton Town Square to promote the opening of Sweet Bits, the Sweet Bits Bakery. So they've got some samples out on a table in Horton Town Square, and Trip is talking to Allie in the square about the Johnny and Chanel situation, but she says she's a little bit too busy to get too into it at that time, as she's busy with the bakery opening. But she is kind of deflecting and not wanting to get into it, and then she has a similar conversation with Chanel herself, and she admits that she may not have only been... She says that she was being protective of Chanel because she knows her brother's history with girls, and sometimes he dates them and gets them into bed and then gets rid of them after that, and Allie did not want that to happen to Chanel, but she also admits in the end that yes, there may have also been the reason of some jealousy going on, as Allie and Chanel have their own history, as you know. So if you've got this romantic history and your twin brother then is trying to date that same person, obviously there's going to be some mixed emotions and jealousy involved, and I obviously more than think that's what's going on there. We basically know that's what's going on there. Meanwhile, Julie and Doug together, yes, arrive in the square, and they sample some of the Sweet Bits Bakery goodies, and Julie makes the remark that the donuts, the Sweet Bit donuts, taste so much like Alice's donuts, and of course, after some back and forth and debating, Julie did give them the Alice Horton donut recipe to make at Sweet Bits, and Doug can't remember who Alice is. Doug can't remember who Alice Horton is? Alice Horton, the matriarch of this entire show? He can't remember, so obviously something's going on with Doug, and I do believe that Jack and Julie will persuade him to see a doctor about what is going on, probably next week. We have also at the DiMera mansion another argument between Johnny and EJ. Johnny comes in, overhears EJ threatening Xander, and Johnny basically says to EJ, "Is this the kind of DiMera work that you're trying to coax me to get into, threatening people and kind of like mob stuff?" And EJ tries to explain that away. Johnny ends up leaving, so they basically just have another argument over the fact that Johnny is more into the idea of becoming a filmmaker. We'll get into that filmmaker stuff right at the end of this video, because there's some stuff coming up next week. Chad and EJ also have an argument in the DiMera mansion, and it's basically about Sammy. Chad doesn't buy into the fact that EJ doesn't know where Sammy is, and Chad doesn't buy into the fact that EJ never wants to see Sammy again. So if anybody's onto anything, it might be Chad that is eventually going to be on to where the heck did Sammy disappear to, and does EJ have something to do with it? But EJ gives some brotherly advice back to Chad, who EJ says, "I don't exactly see your wife around here either." And long story short, EJ at the end gives Chad the advice to go and get Abby instead of waiting for Jack to talk to Abby and talk to Jennifer and see what's going on there and if they're ever coming back. EJ tells Chad to, in a very caveman-like way, go to, I think it's Boston, and get Abigail and just drag her back. I don't think it works like that, but that is exactly the advice that Chad does end up taking, and so he gets to where Abigail is staying and is looking for her, and she does appear at the end of Friday. So next week we're gonna see what Abigail has to say. And finally, or not finally, actually there's a little bit more that happens on Friday. I told you we might go long this week. Johnny runs into Trip at the hospital, and they have a little bit of a back and forth chat, but the main thing you need to take away from that is that Johnny tells Trip to tell his sister to back off of his business. In other words, he does not want Allie interfering between him and Chanel. So we'll have to see what exactly Tripp does say to Allie about all of that. Gwen also goes back to see Xander at his room. They know that Bonnie was arrested, and I believe that Xander gives her the information that the cops still have the money, so he is not able to give the money over to Xander at this time because the cops have seized the money that Bonnie tried to steal and give to Callista. EJ, meanwhile, calls and wants his money back and is full of venom, and he is making his warnings known. Gwen and Xander, meanwhile, get closer, and then they start to together brainstorm a lie that they can tell Jack, because Jack still doesn't know the final piece of why Gwen lied, and Gwen is keeping a secret about how she actually lost her baby. And when that comes out, we'll have to see. Obviously, that would break more trust between Gwen and Jack. And Xander does not want Gwen and Jack's relationship to have any strain, as they have just found one another and found out that they were mother and daughter. And I guess he thinks things are messed up enough and that Gwen has been through a lot. He also has feelings for Gwen, obviously. So Gwen and Xander are trying to brainstorm some kind of different lie that they can tell Jack that will keep him at bay for now, and he won't have any suspicions about what's really going on and what this true secret is and what he needs to do about it. And finally, EJ shows up for his money. He shows up to Xander's room after a while, and he doesn't get his money, obviously, because Xander is unable to give it to him. The money is tied up in the cop shop. So EJ vows that he is going to send Xander right back to jail. He won't be getting his job. He won't be getting any of it. EJ is going to undo all the favors that he's done for Xander and send him right back to jail, it seems like. Now, we're going to get into Beyond Salem next time, but I just wanted to talk about a few things. First of all, Abigail does seem to be back. We saw a little glimpse of her at the end of Friday, so she should be back and having lots to say by next week. Before next week, probably in the next 48 hours, I'm going to release a video that somewhat recaps Beyond Salem, but I will give you a couple of my thoughts right here at the end of this video. So without spoiling everything for everybody, because I want to give time for people to be able to watch Beyond Salem, a little bit of extra time over this weekend perhaps. But we do all know from the promo video that obviously Shane Donovan has recruited John for a special mission, and John is bringing along Marlena to Zurich. I want to say that it was really good to see Shane Donovan back as a character. Charles Shaughnessy, amazing to see him back. He is a legacy character on Days of Our Lives, and he is really good in his ISA agent role. I can't spoil something that I want to talk about in regards to Charles Shaughnessy, so I won't do that at this time. We also know that Tony and Anna are going to Zurich to help Carrie and Austin with their marriage, and we know that Sierra and Ben go to New Orleans. I can't say what happens with them in this video, but we also have Lisa Rinna reprising her role as Billy Reed. It was good to see Lisa Rinna. I know that she's on a couple different shows, and I know that she can be a controversial person, but I haven't followed her career on those shows. I don't know much about that. I will just say that I thought it was nice to see Lisa back as Billy, even if it was for a short stint, and I enjoyed her interactions as well with her brother Austin, who was being played by the second Austin, not the original Austin. They've been a little bit back and forth over the years, but But on Beyond Salem, Austin Peck is playing Austin Reed. Easy for me to say. Austin Peck is playing Austin Reed on Beyond Salem. So we get some Billy and Carrie and Austin. Some old school for sure. We get some Shane. We get some Anna and Tony, obviously. We get some Abe, Eli, Lonnie, and Paulina in Miami. And all of this is... all of these people in all these different places, it's all related back. We, of course, also see Will and the new Sonny, along with Chad and Leo Stark in Beyond Salem. We get some good scenes between John and Carrie, because when Carrie was growing up on Days of Our Lives, she had a lot of scenes with John as her father. And of course, John is not her father. This was when we thought that John was her father, in the form of, we thought that John was Roman Brady. So John was Roman Brady, or we thought he was, for a number of years. So there is a definite closeness still between John and Carrie. And we see some really nice scenes between the two of them, where you can kind of see the real life connection between those two. And of course, we're going to see not only Kristen DeMira, but Sister Mary Moira show up on Beyond Salem, and those were both played, of course, by Eileen Davidson. I'm going to check our timestamp right now, which is at 41 minutes and 28 seconds. So if you made it this far, congratulations, because I did not think that I had gone for 41 minutes on this, but we will get back to things. We will get back in the regular routine of things after we do what will be coming up next, which is a very special video looking at Beyond Salem and everything that happened. If you have any comments about this past week or anything at all, let me know. Be sure to comment down in the comment sections. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to this extra long version of In Between Days. I thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoy it. In the coming weeks, I'm going to be doing some new special stuff, and one of those things will be trivia, so we will start interacting more, hopefully, in the comments. I'm going to do some trivia regarding Days of Our Lives, obviously. And please look to this channel. We have other things that you can check out. We have the Wait That's Weird podcast, and we have some new stuff that's going to be coming out on this channel. I'll let you know all about it in a different video, or sometime soon in some way, shape, or form, because we are definitely, I said we might go over this week, and we have gone over this week. So before we get any more long-winded, I don't want it to be, I mean, we're almost at the length of one actual show, so we talked about the whole week in about 45 minutes. It's a little bit of a long one, but I hope you all enjoyed it. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts on anything on the show, Days of Our Lives show, on this show, on Beyond Salem. But I definitely want any feedback regarding this show here, In Between Days. We would love to hear from you. And once again, thank you so much for subscribing and being a part of the In Between Days family. And I will see you next time.